Thank you, Neil.
Welcome back, my dear viewers, to part 7.
Lovely.
And now we come to the time periods used in the prophecies. The book of Revelation uses a period of 3.5 years. It uses it in chapters 11, 12 and 13. But let's think of it for a minute. 1900 years have gone since the book of Revelation was given, and 3.5 years is a very, very short period. So could it be that it's not actually talking about a literal 3.5 years, but perhaps a longer time? We don't know. The only way we can find that out is looking at how time periods are used by the other prophets in the Bible, because of course the Bible is one. It was given by the same God, and it uses much of the same language. So what we'll do is we'll look at how the Bible uses time periods in its various prophecies, starting very early on in the book of books. Now, first of all, 7 times. If after all this you will not listen to me, I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. This was God warned the Israelites that this is what would happen to them. It would happen after this happened. In other words, the 7 times would start after this. You shall be defeated by your enemies. Those who hate you shall reign over you. They were defeated by the Assyrians in 723 BC, that's before Christ. They were defeated by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The Assyrians and the Babylonians began to reign over them, over the 10 tribes, first of all, and then over the 2 tribes. So this punishment, which God warned about, could be said to begin in 586 BC. That is the second of the punishments. The Jews did not, on the whole, obey God, so the punishment was inevitable. What do the 7 times mean? Could it be 7 years? In the long history of the Jewish people, 7 years is so short as to be almost meaningless. A much longer period has to be meant. Could a day stand for a year? Let us assume for the present that it does. We will see later on if it is supported by the Bible. If it is not, we must discard it. It's no good in us coming up with the idea a day stands for a year. That's worth nothing unless the Bible itself says it.
Interesting.
So the Jewish year had 360 days. If we multiply that by 7, that's 7 times, we come to 2,520. And that period covers the greater part of Jewish history. Starting in 586 BC, that is when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem and ended the throne of David, it brings us up to 1934. Now, was that a significant year? Let's think of it for a moment. But just look what happened the year before. That was a year after Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, and that led to the greatest of all Jewish punishments. Wow. Because there's no mistake about it from the Bible. The Holocaust was a punishment sent by God. Wow. It's something we cannot avoid. It might sound awful, it might even sound anti-Semitic. That's the reality from the Jewish Bible itself.
Yes, I believe you.
He came to power in Germany. That led to the greatest of all Jewish punishments, which will soon lead to the Jewish redemption and the end of all Jewish suffering. The State of Israel was born just a mere 14 years after. Now 40 days, 40 equals 40 years. As I live, says the Lord, in this wilderness your dead bodies will fall. All you who have complained against me, your sons will be nomads in the wilderness for 40 years. For 40 days you spy out the land. Each day shall count for a year. So there we have it now from the Bible itself, that a day stands for a year, because
Brilliant.
that was a prophecy, you see, of the 40 years that's spent in the
Numbers.
yes, and that's from the book of Numbers. Moses had sent 12 spies to inspect the promised land sometime before. The 40 days is a prophecy of the 40 years which the Israelites would spend in the wilderness in the time of Moses. Ezekiel was told, take a day for a year.
Okay.
Ezekiel was told by God, lie down on your left side and take the sin of the house of Israel and yourself. I am making you bear their sin for as many days as you lie there. I myself have set the years. They will sin at 390 days. At the end of these days, you are to lie down again on your right side and bear the sin of the house of Judah for 40 days. I have set the length for you as 1 day per year. So now that's a clear example then with the prophet Ezekiel being told a day stands for a year. Ezekiel was told by God to personally bear the sins of Israel for 390 days and Judah for 40 days, and each day stands for a year. King Nebuchadnezzar was told, now this king was the king in Babylon just over 2,500 years ago. He was, it's fair to say, one of the greatest kings of ancient times.
Oh. What made him so great, Neil?
Well, his kingdom, rather than himself, the kingdom of Babylon at the time was, it was one of the most widespread, but also we'll say things like the great city of Babylon itself, and we know from archaeology that it was a pretty fine city. There was a certain splendour about Babylon,
Okay.
I think, which maybe was not true of the kingdoms which came after it, like Persia and Greece.
Yeah.
But of course he was a very
Like
good...
the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Yes, that's one of them, yes indeed.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the 7 wonders of the world.
And then, sorry to interrupt, but you have Esther Gate, which was
Yeah.
the entrance gate to Babylon, the city of Babylon.
Have you seen-
yes, it was, yes.
That
that's
is
right.
today in Germany.
It is in Germany, I believe.
It is still there.
Yes.
Wow.
I believe that
Esther Gate was
Wow.
taken to Germany.
I believe that the
It was
Stargate...
found by archaeological people
Wow.
and it was taken and polished up.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There was
Beautiful.
12 gates going into the city
Really,
of Babylon.
really.
And they rebuilt the whole Stargate, I believe, in
Thank you,
Berlin.
Patrick.
In Berlin,
Berlin.
Museum,
gosh,
yes, in
gosh.
Museum of Berlin, yes. Now, he was told, let 7 times pass over you.
Okay.
This is the same 7 times as were foretold by Moses 1,000 years earlier. These 7 times predict, in the first place, 7 years of madness, which came to King Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, he did indeed go mad, and he lost his mind for 7 literal years.
Like King George.
Yeah, like Mad King George, yes, yes. But he got his mind back again, though. I wouldn't say that he was the worst of kings. He, for the time, he certainly wouldn't be described as exceptionally cruel. In fact, in some ways, I think Babylonians were more moderate, certainly than the Syrians that came before them, who were much crueler. But he did go mad, and for literally 7 years, and that was the fulfillment of the 7 times in a literal sense, but it is perfectly plain. It had a much longer meaning than this. The 7 times, the years of madness which came to pass, as I say, that when the king lost his mind, these were 7 actual years. So there is no doubt that it foretold world history as well. It predicts the fall of Babylon. It foretells bands of iron and bronze. In Daniel chapter 2, iron stands for the Roman Empire and bronze stands for the Greek Empire. So there is every reason to believe that the 7 times of Moses and Nebuchadnezzar covered the same 2,520 years. Since the start of both periods was initiated by Nebuchadnezzar, the purpose of the second 7 times seems to be to confirm the first. This is often a pattern in the Bible. Jesus said out of mouth of two witnesses or three, everything be confirmed, not out of mouth of one. And the Bible frequently uses two instances, as it were, to confirm each other. Now the 70 weeks, the prophet Daniel was told 70 weeks are decreed concerning your people and concerning your holy city. Know and understand that from the time the command went out to restore and build Jerusalem until an anointed prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. After 62 weeks will an anointed one be cut off. The people of the prince shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. He shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and during half of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. This refers to Christ. That is the covenant made for 1 week and cutting off the sacrifice and offering. And the work that he did at his first coming, he was the anointed one, which is what the word Messiah means. And Jesus was a prince, he was a king in waiting, he was the Messiah, he was cut off, that means put to death. It was he who brought the sacrifice and the offering of the temple to an end, replacing them with the perfect offering of himself. Although the temple did go on for another 37 years or so, in truth its offerings had become meaningless, because the veil of the temple was torn in two, showing that it was finished, and Christ's sacrifice had taken over. And it was no accident, I would say, that it was finally destroyed. Not one stone was left upon another.
No.
A mere 37 years or so after Christ went up to heaven. So 70 weeks are foretold from the issuing of a decree to rebuild Jerusalem up to the death of Christ. The only country to issue these type of decrees was Persia. The Persian Empire issued 4 decrees in favour of the Jews and Jerusalem. And the decree which best fits the 70 weeks was issued by Darius Hystaspes, king of Persia, in 456 BC, that's before Christ. And the 70 weeks comes to 490 days. That is the number of the years from the date of the decree up to the time of Christ. It takes us up to the year 34, that's after Christ. That is almost the exact date of the death of Jesus. So there's no way that those days represent actual days.
No.
They have to represent years. There's no other possibility.
No.
So it came up almost to the very year of Christ, and bearing in mind it was made 490 years before. So
amazing.
yes, the date of the death of Jesus, he was cut off in the middle of the week. A week is 7 days, so the middle of the week is 3.5, and this stands for the 3.5 years of Jesus' ministry. He was cut off, put to death in the middle of the 7-year period, and so you could say that he was cut off in the middle of the week. So in the whole prophecy of the 70 weeks, a day stands for a year. Now the abomination of desolation, from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1335 days. That's from the book of Daniel. Christ warned his disciples to watch out for the abomination of desolation in their day. He said it would appear in the holy place, that was the Temple Mount, where the temple was. This referred to the Roman army which attacked Jerusalem in the year 70. They actually attacked it as early as 66, but they finally captured it in the year 70 under the Roman general Titus, and they destroyed the temple, not leaving one stone upon another. And that brought the daily sacrifice to an end, and the Roman army was the first abomination. And the prophet Daniel foretold that there would be a second and much more permanent abomination in the holy place. He wrote, from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination is set up. So he is saying that the abomination would be set up after the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the Roman army appeared just before and during the taking away of the daily sacrifice. In fact, it was the Roman army that took it away by writing, from the taking away of the daily sacrifice and the setting up of the abomination. Daniel was saying that the two things would be closely connected. The removal of the temple would leave the Temple Mount free for something else, free for the abomination. It would have to be something that the whole world could see. So, is there something in Jerusalem then today which could be described as the abomination of desolation, something standing in the holy place, and that was the Temple Mount? So let's have a look. It is undoubtedly the Dome of the Rock. It is by far the best known building on the Temple Mount. It is a Muslim building.
Oh.
And the Al-Aqsa Mosque is also on the Temple Mount, but it is not nearly as well known as the Dome. The Dome is often used on postcards as a symbol of the whole city of Jerusalem. It was completed in 692. Daniel wrote, from the setting up of the abomination of desolation, there shall be 1290 days. So, if we add 1290 to 692, we come up to 1982. Now, unquestionably, he meant years, days for a year. We come up to 1982, and it seems that 1982 ushered in the final period before the end, the lead up to the end. Daniel adds, blessed is the person who waits and comes to the 1335 days. An extra 45 years are added to take us up to the end. Those extra 45 years takes us up to, it's interesting now, what year do they take us up to, because that year is really the final year mentioned by the Old Testament prophets. And that should be a year that should be happening fairly soon.
I think so, yeah.
So look at what the year is. It's 2027.
Amazing.
6 years away. In fact, it's almost now just 5 years away.
Yeah.
And it does not, of course, automatically mean that the end of the world will happen in 6 years' time, as Jesus said that no one knows the day nor the hour. What it does mean is that we are very near the end.
Yes.
That's simply something that it has to mean. Now, the Dome of the Rock will be swept away by Christ when he comes to make way for the new temple, which he will build on the Temple Mount. And the Dome may in fact be swept away before that.
Yeah, I think it will.
Because there's a Jewish group that have a very advanced plans to lay the foundation for the new temple.
Do you know what they're called?
It's I'm not certain now what the actual group is called, but as far as I know, their leader is Gershom Solomon.
Are they Maccabees?
I don't think they are necessarily Maccabees.
No.
But they've made
They've made it clear.
They've made all the new detailed art plans. They've made a lot of the new instruments for use in the temple, the new garments for the priests and so on.
Amazing that is, isn't it? I find that amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, they may be called the Temple Mount Faithful, but I wouldn't
Something
have to
like
say.
that,
I
yes.
think something
Okay.
like that. Their name is the Dome of the Rock will be swept away by Christ. Then, so in fact, it may be swept away before he comes. Now the Gospel of Luke gives a long account of Jesus' mission after.
And I think that we'll stop there for this session, please, Neil.
Right.
And we'll start that as a new session.
All right.
Because it's 25 minutes.
Is it 25?
Yeah.
Oh, it's over
And
there.
also it's an appropriate time to stop,
It
I
is
think.
indeed, yes.
Because that was quite a lot of information.
Yes.